I never saw it coming, not like this. After 53 years of life, I thought I understood people. I thought I knew my family. But sitting at that mahogany dining table in my own home, staring at the document in front of me, I realized how wrong I'd been about everything. My name is Robert, and this is the story of the night my family showed me who they really were. It started with a phone call from my daughter Sarah. She called me at work on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice unusually sweet, almost rehearsed. "Dad, Mum and I want to do something special, a forgiveness dinner, just us at your place. We want to heal things, you know? We've been thinking about how we've treated you, and we want to make it right." I should have known something was wrong. Sarah had barely spoken to me in months. Ever since I'd made it clear that I wouldn't be giving her unlimited access to my investment accounts, ever since I'd set boundaries about her endless requests for money, she'd been distant, cold even. And now suddenly this change of heart. But I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to believe it so badly. My wife Margaret had left 3 years ago. She'd taken half of everything in the divorce settlement, including the vacation property in Colorado and a significant chunk of my retirement savings. I'd rebuilt after that. I'd worked hard, invested wisely, and I'd managed to stabilize my life. I had enough. I was comfortable, and I was proud of that. Sarah, my only child, had never quite understood the value of that work. She'd grown up expecting things to appear, to be provided, to simply exist for her consumption. When I married Margaret, Sarah was already 25, already accustomed to a certain lifestyle. After the divorce, I couldn't maintain that same level of financial support, and it created a rift between us that never really healed. I arrived home around 6 o'clock that evening. The house smelled like something cooking. Margaret used to do that, make the place smell inviting before guests arrived. But this was my home now, just mine. Sarah had helped herself to decorating it, though. I could see her touch everywhere, the expensive curtains she'd suggested, the artwork that she said made my place look less sad. Sarah was already there when I came through the door, helping her mother set the table. Yes, Margaret, my ex-wife. Sarah had invited her. That should have been my first real warning, but I told myself to be open-minded. People change, families evolve. Margaret looked exactly as she always did, polished, put together, in control. She offered me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Robert, good to see you. Sarah and I have been planning this all week." I felt something shift in my chest, something I couldn't quite name, a pressure, a wrongness. "That's nice," I said, hanging up my coat. "What's the occasion, really?" Sarah laughed, that forced laugh I'd been hearing more and more lately. "Dad, I told you. We want to talk about the future, about family, about making sure everyone's taken care of." We sat down to dinner. Sarah had made my favorite dishes, pot roast, the way my mother used to make it, though I knew for a fact that Sarah had ordered it from some expensive caterer. Margaret had brought wine, a bottle that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. We talked about surface things at first, the weather, Sarah's marketing job, my upcoming retirement plans. But there was an electricity in the air, a tension that sat between us like an uninvited guest. Margaret kept glancing at Sarah. Sarah kept adjusting her napkin. They were waiting for something, building towards something. Halfway through the main course, Margaret set down her fork deliberately. She looked at me with an expression I'd learned to recognize over our years together. It was the expression she wore when she'd already decided something and was simply informing me of the outcome. "Robert, Sarah, and I have been talking," she began. My stomach dropped. "You're getting older," Margaret continued, her voice smooth and practiced. "You're alone now. And honestly, you're not getting any younger. We've become concerned about what happens if something happens to you. What happens to your assets? To this house?" I set down my fork. "Where is this going?" Sarah jumped in, her voice rapid and rehearsed, the way she used to recite school reports. "Dad, it's not bad news. It's actually really practical. We've consulted with an estate planner, a very good one, Margaret's friend, and we think the best thing for everyone is if you transfer the house into my name now, while you're still well. That way, if anything happens, there's no confusion, no legal issues. You stay here, obviously, this is still your home, but legally it would be mine." I stared at her, then at Margaret. They were both watching me carefully, waiting for my response, the way predators watch prey before the strike. "You want me to transfer my house to you?" I repeated slowly, making sure I understood correctly. "Not just the house," Margaret said, gesturing subtly. "We've also drawn up some modifications to your investments. We'd like the accounts to be in both our names, yours and Sarah's. It's protective, Robert. If you become incapacitated—" "I'm not incapacitated. I'm 53 years old, and I'm in perfect health." "But you could be," Sarah said, and something in her tone made my blood run cold. It wasn't concern, it was impatience. "You never know what could happen." That's when I saw it. The document on the table, partially hidden under the breadbasket. I reached over and pulled it out. It was a property transfer form, already filled out, already signed by Sarah and Margaret, both of their signatures witnessed and dated. The only signature missing was mine. I looked at the document in my hands, then I looked at my daughter's face, at my ex-wife's carefully neutral expression, and something inside me broke open, not with anger exactly, but with a profound and absolute clarity. They had decided. They had already planned this entire evening, this entire conversation as a formality. This forgiveness dinner was never about healing. It was about access. It was about control. It was about taking what I had built and making it theirs before I even understood what was happening. Sarah spoke again, sensing my shock. "Dad, don't be dramatic. This is for your own good, for the family's good." I stood up from the table. My legs felt unsteady, but my mind had never been clearer. "No," I said simply. "What do you mean, no?" Margaret's voice had lost its smoothness. There was an edge to it now. "I mean no, to all of it. I'm not signing anything. This dinner is over." Sarah's face flushed. "You're being ungrateful. After everything we've done." "Everything you've done?" I laughed, and it came out bitter. "Sarah, in the last year alone, I've paid for your car insurance, your apartment deposit, and your vacation to Mexico. I've never said no to you. And this is how you repay me, by planning to take my home." "You don't understand," Margaret interjected, standing now. "We're trying to protect you. From what? From myself. I don't need protection. I need my family to respect me, to see me as something other than an ATM. The room went silent. The kind of silence that happens when everyone suddenly realizes they've been caught, when the mask comes off and there's nowhere left to hide. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of anger, of frustration, the tears of someone who'd had their plan interrupted. "You're being selfish," she spat out. "Typical. You've always been selfish. Mom told me you would react like this." "Then why did you bother?" I asked quietly. Margaret gathered her things. Her composure had returned, but it was different now. Colder, more dangerous. "You're making a mistake, Robert. You need to think about what's best for your future." "I am," I said, "and my future doesn't include signing away everything I've worked for." They left shortly after. Not together, but close enough. Sarah left first, storming out without another word. Margaret lingered for a moment, her hand on the doorframe, and she looked at me with something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Pity, mixed with something darker. When they were gone, I sat back down at the table. The food had gone cold. The wine sat in its expensive bottle, untouched. And the document lay there in front of me, a map of betrayal written in legal language. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room in the dark and I thought about everything. About the years of compromise, of giving, of trying to be the father and husband and man that I thought everyone needed me to be. About the constant requests for money, the subtle manipulations, the way I'd been slowly and carefully positioned into a corner. I realized that I'd been so busy trying to hold everything together, so focused on maintaining family harmony, that I'd never really stood up for myself, not truly, not in a way that mattered. The next morning I called my lawyer. My lawyer's name was David Chen, and he'd been handling my legal matters for about 5 years. When I walked into his office the morning after that dinner, he took one look at the documents I'd brought, and his expression told me everything I needed to know. "Robert," he said carefully, "you need to understand something. If you had signed these papers, you would have given up legal ownership of your property and significant control over your finances. This would have been extremely difficult to reverse." "What do I do?" I asked. David leaned back in his chair. "First, we need to understand what they were actually trying to accomplish. This wasn't just about the house. There are modifications here to your investment accounts, your retirement funds, even your safety deposit box access. This is comprehensive." "They want to control everything," I said flatly. "It appears so. The good news is you didn't sign anything. The bad news is that the fact they prepared all this, that they were this organized, suggests this has been planned for a long time. They were patient. They were waiting for the right moment." Over the next few weeks, David helped me understand the full scope of what had been set in motion. He also advised me on something else, something that would ultimately change everything. "Your ex-wife, Margaret," he said during one meeting, "still has limited access to some of your accounts from the divorce settlement. The financial advisor you share, or rather, that she recommended to you, is her friend. These aren't coincidences. You're being maneuvered, Robert, carefully and deliberately. I started making changes. I separated my finances from Margaret's influence. I opened new accounts at a different institution. I changed my financial advisor. I updated my will and made it clear exactly what would happen to my assets if anything happened to me. And it wasn't going to Sarah and Margaret. But the most important thing I did was something David suggested almost offhandedly during one of our meetings. "There's something else," he said. "Have you considered that they might try again, that they might try a different approach?" "What do you mean?" "People like this, Robert. They don't stop. Not when they've already invested this much planning. I'd recommend that you start documenting everything, every conversation, every request, every interaction. If this escalates, you'll want evidence." So I did. I started keeping a detailed record, not in a vengeful way, but in a protective one. I knew my daughter, I knew my ex-wife, I knew their patterns, and I knew that David was right. They wouldn't stop. Sure enough, about 3 weeks after the failed dinner, Sarah called me. "Dad, I want to apologize," she said, her voice small and contrite. "I've been thinking about how I treated you, and I was wrong. Mom was pushing me into that whole property thing. I didn't really want it. I just wanted to feel like you cared about my future." I listened carefully to every word. I heard the manipulation in her tone, the carefully constructed narrative designed to make me feel guilty, to make me doubt my own interpretation of events. "Sarah, I appreciate you reaching out," I said carefully. "But I need you to understand something. That dinner wasn't about caring, it was about taking. And I need things to be different between us going forward." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I love you, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep providing endless financial support, and I can't have people in my life who are trying to manipulate me. So moving forward, our relationship has to be based on honesty and respect, not on what I can give you." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Are you cutting me off?" she finally asked, and there was real anger in her voice now, the mask slipping. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. She hung up on me. Margaret tried a different approach. She called me about a month later, her voice warm and concerned. "Robert, I'm worried about you," she said. "Sarah says you're being cold to her, that you're pushing her away. I know this family has had problems, but this isn't the answer. Margaret, we're divorced. My relationship with Sarah is between me and Sarah, and I'm not discussing this with you. I'm just concerned about your well-being. I appreciate that, but I'm fine. Better than I've been in a long time, actually." She tried different tactics over the next few months. She sent flowers to my house with a card suggesting I was being unreasonable. She ran into me at the grocery store and insisted we grab coffee, where she spent 40 minutes trying to convince me that I was overreacting about the property transfer. She even reached out to my sister, trying to get her to talk sense into me, to convince me to repair my relationship with Sarah, but I stood firm. I didn't waver, and something remarkable happened as a result. I started to feel better, stronger. I started to remember who I was underneath all the years of compromises and people-pleasing. I joined a men's group at a local community center. I traveled to places I'd always wanted to go but hadn't because someone else had other plans. I started dating again, meeting someone named Jennifer, who treated me with respect and kindness, who didn't have an agenda beyond enjoying spending time together. Life was actually becoming enjoyable again. Then came the moment everything shifted. I was at work when my phone rang. It was Sarah, but she wasn't calling to manipulate me or ask for money. She was calling because she'd been to see a financial advisor of her own, not Margaret's friend, a real independent advisor. "Dad," she said quietly, "I need to talk to you. In person. I've realized some things about Mom, and I think you should know about them." We met at a coffee shop near my office. Sarah looked different, tired, older somehow, despite being only 30 years old. There was something about her expression that made me pause. This wasn't manipulation. This was genuine distress. "I hired an independent financial advisor," she began, "because I wanted to understand my own finances better, and while he was reviewing my accounts, he asked me some questions about our family's financial history, about the divorce settlement, about Mom." "Okay," I said carefully. "Dad, I think Mom has been doing something with your money, even after the divorce. The advisor asked me if you knew about some of the transfers that have happened to Mom's accounts from your original joint investment portfolio. When I told him I didn't think you did, he said that might be a problem." I felt the room shift slightly. "What kind of transfers?" "Tens of thousands of dollars, Dad, over the last 3 years. It looks like she's been accessing funds that should have been liquidated in the settlement, and she's been moving them to accounts you're not connected to." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mind was racing. "There's more," Sarah continued. "My advisor also looked at the property transfer they wanted you to sign. He said if you'd signed it, the next step would probably have been to have you declared mentally incompetent, which would have given her and Mom full control over everything that was left. He said it was a classic elder financial abuse setup, even though you're not old, just someone they perceived as vulnerable." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. I needed to understand her motivation. After everything, I still wasn't sure if this was another manipulation or if my daughter was finally seeing clearly. "Because," Sarah said, and tears actually started falling now, "I realized that I was becoming like her, like Mom. I was becoming someone who saw you as a problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved, and I couldn't live with that anymore. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry for everything." I watched my daughter cry across the table from me. I wanted to believe this was genuine. I wanted to believe that she'd had a moment of clarity and was genuinely apologizing. But I'd learned something important over the past few months. I'd learned that forgiveness, real forgiveness, takes time. And that trust, once broken, has to be carefully rebuilt, if it can be rebuilt at all. "I appreciate you telling me this," I said finally, "and I appreciate what you're saying about realizing your mistakes, but we're going to need to take this slowly. I can't just go back to the way things were. There's too much that's happened." "I understand," she said. I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what we were doing." With the information Sarah had provided, David helped me investigate Margaret's financial activities. It turned out that there had indeed been unauthorized transfers. Nothing so egregious that it would constitute clear-cut theft in a way that would hold up in court. But the pattern was there. The intent was clear. We sent Margaret a strongly worded letter from David's office. We documented everything. We made it clear that we knew what she'd been doing and that any further attempts to access my accounts or manipulate my financial situation would result in legal action. Margaret's response came through her own lawyer. She denied everything, claimed she'd always had authorization for those transfers, and offered a settlement. She would return a portion of the money, and in exchange I would agree not to pursue legal action. I accepted the settlement, not because I believed her denial, but because I was tired of fighting, tired of the constant stress and vigilance. The settlement allowed me to reclaim about 60% of what had been taken. More importantly, it allowed me to move forward. In the aftermath of everything, my relationship with Sarah slowly began to heal. It wasn't a quick process. There were setbacks and moments where old patterns tried to resurface, but bit by bit we rebuilt something new, something different from what we'd had before. Not the conditional, transactional relationship we'd had when she was asking for money, but something deeper, something real. I never would have thought that the worst night of my life, sitting at that table, staring at the documents that represented my family's betrayal, would eventually lead to the best chapter of my life. But that's exactly what happened. I'd set boundaries, I'd held firm, and in doing so, I'd not only protected myself and my assets, but I'd also given my daughter the chance to become someone better than the person she was becoming. As for Margaret, we haven't spoken since the settlement. I don't need to. I've moved on. I have my life back, and I'm living it on my own terms. And every day, I'm grateful for that clarity that came to me that night. The clarity that allowed me to see my family for who they really were, and to love myself enough to say no. 6 months after everything fell apart, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Margaret's lawyer, but not about money or threats. It was about Sarah. Apparently, Sarah had filed a formal complaint with the state licensing board against the financial advisor, Margaret's friend, who had orchestrated the entire scheme. She'd gathered documentation, provided testimony, and exposed years of fraudulent activity that went far beyond just my case. When I read that letter, I realized something profound. My daughter wasn't just apologizing to me. She was making a real choice. She was choosing to stand on the right side of justice, even though it meant going against her mother. That took courage. Real courage. We started having coffee regularly after that. Not the transactional meetings we used to have where she'd ask me for money, but real conversations. She told me about the financial advisor who had coached her and Margaret for months, training them on what to say, how to manipulate me, how to make it all seem reasonable. I was angry at first, she told me one afternoon, when I realized what they'd planned. I was angry at myself for going along with it. But then my advisor, the real one, the honest one, he told me something that stuck with me. He said, "Your father had 2 choices that night. He could have signed those papers, or he could have walked away. He walked away because he loved himself enough to say, 'No, you can do the same thing right now. You can choose to be better than this.'" "And you did," I said. "I'm trying," Sarah replied. "Every day, I'm trying." What surprised me most wasn't just Sarah's transformation. It was how that one moment of clarity, sitting at that dinner table, seeing the trap they'd set, had rippled out into the world. Because of my refusal to sign those papers, because of my willingness to take legal action, Margaret's financial advisor ended up losing his license. Other families were protected. Other people didn't fall into the same trap. One elderly woman reached out to me through David's office. She said that after reading about my case, which had become part of a larger investigation into elder financial abuse, she'd recognized the same patterns in her own life. She'd managed to stop her daughter and her daughter's husband from doing the exact same thing. "You saved my life," she told me in a letter. "Not just my money, my life, my dignity, my independence." That letter sits on my desk to this day. As for Margaret, the fallout was significant. The investigation revealed that she'd done similar things to other people. She lost her professional reputation. Most of her friends distanced themselves from her. She tried reaching out to me multiple times, but I couldn't find it in myself to engage with her anymore. I didn't hate her. Hate takes energy, and I'd already given her enough of that. But I also couldn't pretend that what she'd done was acceptable or that we could move past it. Some betrayals are too deep. Jennifer, the woman I'd started dating, became a steady presence in my life. She'd been through her own family trauma, a brother who'd stolen from her, parents who'd taken sides, so she understood the particular kind of pain that comes from family betrayal. We didn't rush things. We took our time, but eventually we moved in together, and life felt normal again. Better than normal. It felt like mine. Work became more fulfilling too. I'd always been good at what I do, but after everything with my family, I discovered I had a real passion for helping people understand financial security and protecting themselves from manipulation. I started volunteering with a non-profit that helps people recognize signs of financial abuse. Sarah eventually became part of my new life in a healthy way. She'd gotten herself into therapy to work through the family dynamics and her own tendencies toward people-pleasing and manipulation. She was rebuilding her life too, on better foundations. 1 year after that dinner, we all went out together, me, Sarah, and Jennifer. It was casual, nothing fancy, just lunch at a restaurant we all liked. And sitting there, watching my daughter laugh genuinely, seeing her treat people with respect and kindness, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace, not the false peace of pretending everything was fine. Not the fragile peace of holding everything together through compromise and self-sacrifice, but real peace, the kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. 2 years later, I was having dinner with Sarah when she told me something that nearly brought me to tears. "Dad, I've been thinking about something," she said. "I want to start a foundation for people who've experienced financial abuse. I want to use some of the money I've saved to help people get out of situations like we were creating, like I almost helped Mom create." I looked at my daughter across the table, and I saw someone I didn't recognize at first. Then I realized I did recognize her. I recognized the person she could have been all along if circumstances had been different, if I'd set boundaries sooner, if I'd loved myself enough to say no. "That's a beautiful idea," I told her. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said. "Without you refusing to sign those papers, without you choosing yourself. You gave me permission to choose myself too." The foundation launched 6 months later. Sarah brought in financial advisors, therapists, legal experts. They created resources for people in vulnerable situations. They ran seminars in community centers. They helped families navigate the complicated terrain of financial manipulation and betrayal. I served on the board. It felt right, taking what had almost destroyed me and transforming it into something that could help others. Margaret eventually reached out one final time. She wanted to meet. I almost said no, but Jennifer convinced me that closure might be worth my time. We met in a neutral location, a park near my house. Margaret looked different, smaller somehow, like she'd been diminished by her own actions. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said immediately. "I just wanted you to know that I've been in therapy too. I've realized some things about myself, about why I did what I did. It doesn't excuse it, but I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how badly I hurt you and Sarah." I listened. I didn't respond with anger or coldness, but I also didn't pretend that things could go back to normal between us. There were some things that couldn't be repaired, and I'd made peace with that. "I'm glad you're getting help," I said. "I hope you find peace with what you've done." "I hope so too," she replied. We parted on civil terms, not friendly, but civil, and that was enough. 3 years after that dinner that changed everything, I stood in front of a room of about 100 people. They were there for a seminar on recognizing financial abuse. Some were victims themselves. Some were family members worried about loved ones. Some were professionals trying to help. Sarah introduced me. "This is my father, Robert. 3 years ago, he faced a moment that could have destroyed his life. Instead, he chose to protect himself, and in doing that, he protected me too. He gave me a roadmap for choosing myself. I want him to tell you his story." I told them everything. I told them about the dinner, about the documents, about the moment I said no. I told them about the months of manipulation that followed and how I stood firm. I told them about Sarah's redemption and my own healing. And I told them the most important thing I'd learned. Loving yourself enough to set boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential. If you're in a situation where people are trying to manipulate you, trying to take what's yours, whether that's money, property, time, or dignity, you have the power to say no, I told them. It might cost you relationships, it might be painful, but the alternative is losing yourself entirely, and that's a price too high to pay. After the seminar, a man approached me. He was probably in his 60s, with grey hair and tired eyes. "Thank you," he said. "I came here today because I'm in a similar situation with my son. I wasn't sure if I was being paranoid or if something was really wrong. Listening to your story, I know now something is wrong, and I know what I have to do." "It won't be easy," I told him. "I know, but at least now I know I'm not crazy. That's something." That conversation validated everything I'd gone through, every painful moment, every difficult choice, every night I lay awake wondering if I'd done the right thing. It had all led to this, to being able to help someone else see clearly when their own vision was obscured by family pressure and manipulation. I retired the next year. Jennifer and I traveled. We spent time with Sarah, who was thriving in her work with the foundation. We got married in a small ceremony with just close friends. We built a life that was ours, not dictated by family obligation, not structured around people-pleasing, not designed to satisfy anyone but ourselves. Sometimes late at night, I think back to that dinner. I think about the moment I saw the document and felt that absolute clarity. I think about how different my life would be if I'd signed those papers, how small I would have made myself, how much I would have lost. And I'm grateful for the pain that led to wisdom, grateful for the betrayal that led to clarity, grateful for the moment I chose myself, because that choice, that simple, powerful no, changed everything. It changed my life. It changed Sarah's life. It changed the lives of countless people who've been helped by the foundation. One moment, one decision, one refusal to accept what was being done to me. That's all it took to reclaim my life. That's all it takes for anyone. If you're facing your own version of that dinner, know this: you have more power than you realize. You can say no, you can protect yourself, you can choose yourself. And in doing that, you might just save not only your own life, but the lives of everyone around you. Because sometimes the most loving thing we can do for the people we care about is refuse to enable their worst impulses. Sometimes the greatest gift is saying no.